My name is Dr. Velez. I'm a neurosurgeon at University Hospital in Newark, New Jersey. I've been practicing for 11 years, 8 of those in trauma neurosurgery. I've performed over 400 craniotomies, extracted tumors the size of golf balls, repaired gunshot wounds that should have been fatal. I've held human brains in my hands. I've seen things that would make most people quit medicine entirely. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what happened on December 9th, 2023. It was a Saturday night, which in Newark means the ER is chaos. Stabbings, overdoses, car accidents. I was on call finishing paperwork in my office around 11 p.m. when my pager went off. Severe head trauma, female, mid-30s, incoming from a single vehicle collision on Route 21. ETA 4 minutes. I grabbed my coffee and headed down. The air in the trauma bay had that sharp metallic smell of blood mixed with antiseptic. I could hear the paramedics before I saw them. The gurney wheels squeaking, someone calling out vitals. They wheeled her in. Her name was Jennifer Callahan. Brown hair matted with blood, face swollen but relatively intact considering the damage. The steering column had gone through her windshield. She wasn't wearing a seatbelt. GCS was 7 when they found her. Low, but not the worst I'd seen. Pupils, I asked. Fixed and dilated, the paramedic said. Both of them. No response to light. That's never good. Fixed. Dilated pupils usually mean severe brain injury. Herniation, increased intracranial pressure, sometimes irreversible damage. But her heart rate was steady. Blood pressure holding. She was breathing on her own, though we'd intubated her in the field as a precaution. We got her into CT within 6 minutes. I stood in the reading room, watching the images populate on the screen. My radiologist that night was Dr. Claire Okonkwo. Sharp as hell, been doing this for 15 years. Aaron, she said quietly, look at this. The scan showed a massive subdural hematoma on the right side, blood pooling between her skull and brain, creating pressure. But that wasn't the worst part. There was diffuse axonal injury throughout both hemispheres, the kind of shearing damage you see in high-speed accidents. Her brainstem showed signs of compression. She needs surgery now, I said. We need to evacuate that hematoma before... Wait, Claire pointed at the screen. Look at the density readings here and here. I leaned closer. The blood collection showed density values that didn't make sense. Too uniform, too organized, like it had been there for days, not minutes. Equipment error, I suggested. Maybe, but look at the midline shift. The brain tissue was being pushed 7 millimeters to the left. That kind of shift should have had her seizing or in a coma. But downstairs, her vitals were stable. Too stable. We prepped her for emergency surgery anyway. I had my resident, Dr. Marcus Chen, assisting. We got her into OR3 around midnight. The anesthesiologist, Tanner Brooks, had her under deep sedation. EEG leads were attached to monitor brain activity during the procedure. I made the initial incision, reflected the scalp, and got the craniotomy ready to open her skull. Standard procedure I'd done hundreds of times. The drill whirred, bone dust in the air. I lifted the bone flap. The dura underneath was tense, bulging with pressure. I made a careful incision. That's when things stopped making sense. There was no hematoma. Marcus, are you seeing this? He leaned in. Where's the blood? The subdural space was clean. No blood collection, no swelling. The brain looked normal, maybe slightly edematous, but nothing like what the CT had shown 15 minutes earlier. Tanner, I called out. What's her ICP reading? Intracranial pressure. Should have been through the roof with that kind of bleed. 12, he said. Normal range. I looked at Marcus. He looked at me. Neither of us said what we were both thinking. Dr. Velez, one of the scrub nurses, spoke up. The EEG monitor. I glanced at the screen mounted on the wall. The EEG showed completely flat lines. No delta waves, no theta waves, nothing. Just flat, continuous lines across all 16 channels. That can't be right, I said. Check the leads. The neurotech was already on it. Leads are connected. Impedance is normal. I'm getting good contact. Run a calibration. She did. The machine showed it was functioning perfectly, but the EEG showed zero brain activity. electrocerebral silence, what we see in brain death. Tanner, what's her blood pressure? 115/72. Heart rate 68. Oxygen saturation 99%. All normal. Perfect, actually. You can't have normal vital signs with a completely dead brain. The brainstem controls those functions. If her brain was dead, her heart would stop. Her breathing would stop. She'd be gone. I stood there with her skull open, staring at a brain that looked fine but showed no electrical activity. I felt something I hadn't felt in years in an operating room. Genuine fear. "Close her up," I said quietly. "What?" Marcus looked at me. "We're not going to... There's nothing to fix. Close her up. Now." We closed. I stripped off my gloves, left the OR, and went straight to the imaging suite. Pulled up Jennifer Callahan's CT scan again on the workstation. The subdural hematoma was right there on the screen, clear as day, 7mm midline shift, brainstem compression, but I'd just been inside her skull. There was nothing there. I called Claire. She came down, looked at the scans again with me. "I don't understand," she said. "These images are clear. That's definitely a hematoma." "Could you have been looking at the wrong side?" "I wasn't looking at the wrong side." "Then the scan is wrong." "The scan isn't wrong." "I saw what I saw, Claire. There was no blood." She didn't argue with me. She just stared at the screen. Finally, she said, "We should scan her again." We did. Wheeled her back to CT at 2:17 a.m. I stood next to the tech, watching the new images populate. Normal. Completely normal. No hematoma, no midline shift, no brainstem compression, a brain that looked like it belonged to someone who'd never been in an accident. "Pull up the previous scan," I told the tech. "The one from midnight." He did, side by side on the screen. The first scan showing massive trauma, the second scan showing nothing, 43 minutes apart. "Spontaneous resolution?" the tech offered weakly. "Subdural hematomas don't spontaneously resolve in 40 minutes, I said. "That's not how physics works." I went back to the ICU. Jennifer was in bed 6, still intubated, still sedated. I checked her chart. Vital stable. The EEG monitor next to her bed still showed flatline. I grabbed a pen light, pulled back her eyelid. Her pupil constricted immediately. Brisk, normal response. Pupils don't respond if your brain is dead. I did a cold caloric test, squirted ice water in her ear canal to test brainstem reflexes. Her eyes deviated appropriately. Every physical exam I did said her brain was working fine. Every monitor said she was brain dead. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes, just watching her. The ventilator hissing, the monitors beeping. Everything normal except for the one thing that determines if someone is alive or dead. Then her eyes opened. Not fluttering, not gradual, just open, looking straight at me. She was still intubated, still sedated with enough propofol to keep a horse unconscious. The EEG still showed flatline, but she was looking at me. I felt my throat go dry. "Jennifer?" She blinked once, deliberately. "Can you hear me?" Another blink. The EEG didn't change, still completely flat. I backed away and grabbed the phone. Called my attending, Dr. Raymond Shaw. Woke him up at 2:30 a.m. "Ray, I need you to come in." "Aaron, unless someone's dying, I need you to see this. Now, please." He heard something in my voice. Arrived 23 minutes later, still in his jacket over scrubs. I showed him everything. The scans, the EEG, the patient, now with her eyes closed again. Vital stable. Ray examined her himself, checked everything I'd checked. Finally, he straightened up and said, "Take her off sedation. Let's see what happens." We stopped the propofol drip at 3:45 a.m. Most patients take 15 to 20 minutes to start waking up. Jennifer Callahan sat up in bed at 3:46. Just sat straight up, eyes open, intubation tube still in her throat. The EEG still showed flatline. She reached up, calmly, deliberately, and pulled the tube out herself. Didn't gag, didn't cough. Just pulled it out and dropped it on the bed. Then she looked directly at Ray and said, "I'm thirsty. Can I have some water?" Her voice was clear, normal. No hoarseness from the intubation, no confusion. She spoke like someone who'd just woken up from a nap. Ray didn't move. I didn't move. The nurse in the corner didn't move. "Hello," Jennifer said. "I just asked for water. Is something wrong?" Ray found his voice. "Ms. Callahan, do you know where you are?" "Hospital, I'm guessing. I was in a car accident." She touched her head gingerly. "Did you drill into my skull?" "I can feel the bone. It's different." "You remember the surgery?" "I remember everything." She looked at me. "You were worried." "In the operating room, you kept saying it didn't make sense. I felt cold. You were under anesthesia." "I know, I could hear all of you anyway. You said there was no blood." The nurse, the tall one, she said maybe you were looking at the wrong side. "You weren't. I knew you weren't." The EEG monitor next to her bed still showed 16 flat lines. Ray pulled me outside. His face was pale under the fluorescent lights. "We need to document this carefully," he said. "Every test, every measurement. I don't know what this is." We ran every test we could think of over the next 3 days. MRI, PET scan, SPECT scan, portable EEG, continuous monitoring. We brought in specialists from neurology, from psychiatry, from biomedical engineering. All of them saw the same thing, zero brain activity, but Jennifer was fine. Walking, talking. She remembered her childhood in perfect detail. She did complex math in her head. She passed every cognitive test we gave her. She read magazines. She laughed at jokes. She was completely, impossibly normal. The PET scan should have shown glucose metabolism in the brain. It showed nothing. The SPECT scan should have shown blood flow. It showed minimal perfusion, barely enough to keep the tissue alive, not nearly enough to support consciousness. On day 4, our ethics board got involved, then hospital administration, then legal. Everyone had the same question. How do you classify someone as alive when every objective measure says they're brain dead? How do you justify keeping them in the hospital when they're functionally healthy? On day 6, Jennifer Callahan signed herself out against medical advice. Her sister drove her home. She was smiling and waving as they left. The portable EEG we'd insisted she wear for monitoring was still strapped to her head, still transmitting data to our servers, still showing flatline. I tried to go back to normal work, tried to focus on other patients, other surgeries, but I couldn't let it go. Started digging through our hospital archives late at night when I should have been sleeping, looking for anything similar. Found 2 cases, one from 2019, motorcycle accident, 26-year-old male, severe TBI, EEG showed brain death for 4 consecutive days. Patient woke up on day 5, walked out of the hospital on day 9, neurologically intact, no deficits. One from 2015, anoxic brain injury after cardiac arrest, 41-year-old female, 23 minutes without oxygen, brain death by every clinical measure, patient recovered fully, discharged after 8 days. Follow-up showed normal cognitive function, both cases documented by different attendings. Both cases showed the same impossible pattern, normal vital signs, zero brain activity, complete recovery, and both patients were treated in the same ICU Bay Six, where Jennifer Callahan had been. I showed Ray. He read through the files in silence, his jaw working. Finally, he closed the laptop and said, "Don't talk about this. Don't publish it. Don't even think about it too hard." "Ray, I mean it, Aaron. There's no explanation. There's no mechanism. If you start talking about this, people will think you're losing it. They'll question every diagnosis you've ever made. Your career will be over." He was right. I knew he was right, but I went back to Bay 6 anyway, late one night in January around 2 a.m. The hospital was quiet, just the hum of equipment and distant footsteps. I stood there in the empty room. The monitors were off. The bed was made. Everything clean and sterile, and waiting for the next patient. I don't know what I expected to find. Some explanation, some clue, something that would make sense of what I'd seen. I heard footsteps behind me. One of the night nurses, woman named Jasmine, who'd been working ICU for 20 years. "You're looking into the ghosts," she said quietly. I turned. "What?" "The patients who don't die. The ones who come back from nothing." She paused in the doorway. "We've all noticed. We just don't talk about it. Been happening since before I started here." "How many?" I asked. "I've personally seen 4, including your Miss Callahan. Heard about maybe 3 or 4 others from nurses who've been here longer." She looked at the empty bed. "Always this room, always the same pattern. And they always leave fine." "What do you think it is?" Jasmine shrugged. "Above my pay grade, doctor. I just know that sometimes people don't die when they're supposed to, and maybe that's not the worst thing in the world." She walked away before I could respond. I pulled Jennifer's records one more time the next week. She'd followed up with her primary care doctor, completely healthy, some residual soreness from the accident, no neurological deficits whatsoever. She'd gone back to work as an elementary school teacher, living a normal life with a brain that, according to every test we'd done, shouldn't be capable of consciousness. I transferred to a different hospital 3 months ago, told everyone it was for better research opportunities, better pay, better hours. Nobody questioned it, but the truth is I couldn't work there anymore. Couldn't walk past Bay 6 without feeling something cold settle into my chest. Couldn't look at an EEG without wondering what it's actually measuring. Couldn't stand in an operating room without questioning whether I actually understood what I was looking at. I still think about Jennifer Callahan. Wonder if she's still out there, teaching kids their ABCs with a brain that shouldn't work but does anyway. Wonder if she knows how impossible she is. Wonder if it matters. I don't work nights anymore. I make sure of that. And when I'm doing a craniotomy now, when I open someone's skull and see that gray matter underneath, I sometimes catch myself thinking, what if we don't actually understand what we're looking at? What if the electrical activity we measure is just the shadow of something else? Something we can't detect because we haven't built the right instruments yet? Medical school teaches you that death is the absence of life, that consciousness requires electrical activity, that the brain is a biological computer, and when it stops processing, the person stops existing. But what do you do when the computer is off and the person is still there? I don't have an answer. I don't think anyone does. All I know is that there are at least 7 documented cases in the last 15 years, probably more that weren't properly recorded, all in the same room, all impossible. And the hospital keeps using that room because officially, nothing unusual has ever happened there. Sometimes I wonder if I should have pushed harder, published something, made noise. But who would believe it? The data makes no sense. The cases violate everything we know about neuroscience. I'd be laughed out of every journal, every conference, every professional circle I've spent years building, so I keep quiet, like everyone else who's seen it. But I still have Jennifer's EEG recordings saved on an encrypted drive. Sometimes late at night, I pull them up. 16 channels of perfect, unbroken silence from a woman who was very much alive. Have you ever seen something you couldn't explain? Something that made you question everything you thought you knew? Because I used to trust data. I used to trust instruments and measurements and peer-reviewed science. Now I'm not sure what I trust anymore. Except this, sometimes the monitors lie. Sometimes what we call death might just be something we don't have the tools to understand yet. And sometimes in one specific room in a hospital in Newark, people come back from impossible places. I just hope I never have to figure out why.